Alright, we're just gonna start recording now. I've taken a lot of notes, looked at some Veigar stats before this video. That way I can try to make this video a little shorter than some of my VoD reviews have been. Some of them have been dragging on until like 40 minutes or so. I would rather these not cross the 40-minute mark. Although this game itself crossed the 40-minute mark, I think if I can just condense down the VoD into the really important parts, ramble a little less, and just have a constructed script beforehand, then this could be a lot quicker. So with that in mind, I'm going to try to have this finished before 35 minutes. But ideally I'm aiming for 25 and a half hour here, actually. But if it means that I don't fit everything in, then I'm going to go on a little longer. But getting straight into it, looking at this game, you mentioned that you thought this game was in the bag. And when you look at the kind of lead that your team has, I would feel like I would agree. When you have this kind of massive lead, it usually feels like you can win. But this is when you have to focus on your win condition and execute on it. Once games go past 30-35 minutes, it kind of doesn't matter how big your lead is, you could still lose with enough of a throw. And what I see here is that your team definitely throws twice at 32 minutes and 37 minutes. We'll get there eventually, but it's worth pointing out ahead of time that this throw at 32 minutes is probably the biggest one where it costs you the game. This is where like the graph should end, right? This should just be the end of the game. But what's specifically wrong here is that you actually end up basing when your team is going for the game-winning push. But we'll eventually get there. The other thing I wanted to point out, this is your kill map. All of your deaths are around the mid lane. You have 8 deaths. I'm not counting this one because this is the very end of the game. You have 8 deaths. 6 of them happen all within mid, all of them right here, and then 2 of them happen at dragon. So we'll keep that in mind as we keep going forward. As for your rune choices and your build, I think your build is mostly okay, but it is the order in which you buy the things that you have that is the problem. I think your runes are also okay, but I think they are only okay, and okay is not good enough. When you're playing in platinum, you need to be better than okay. You need to be really optimizing your game and eliminating mistakes, and there are a lot of mistakes in your build, and I also think you are suboptimal. When you see something like this on the pro builds, this is the same case for a Talia review I gave the other day, where 95% of the games people run Aerie. I don't see Meteor in any of these games. Well, there's 2. The reason people are taking Inspiration and Unsealed Spellbook over Meteor is that by the time Veigar scales up, you don't really need Meteor to kill somebody. You're not really a poke champion like Xerath, who like lands a couple Meteors from long range and eventually kills you. You just land a stun, and if you have, 300 AP and Magic Pen already, that guy dies. End of story. You don't need a Meteor. So the reason you see everybody and their mom taking Summoner Spellbook, because Summoner Spellbook makes you more useful. It gives you more help in the laning phase, more utility in the laning phase, where you possibly need more TPs to continue farming. Maybe you need heal, maybe you need cleanse. I think what you're seeing here is that all the summoners that Veigar takes are usually defensive. There's only 3 ignites in here. So basically you just try to play safe with Veigar in the first 15 to 20 minutes because you scale so amazingly well. Not a lot of aggression here, really. A lot of farming, a lot of Seraphs instead of Ludens. As you get higher up into the elos, I think Seraphs beats Ludens in general, because Ludens doesn't scale as well into the late game. Seraphs just generally has a better build path, because you see people typically back for the tier first, and then Lost Chapter comes later. So generally Seraphs tends to be better in high elo just because the build path is much more pain-free and comfortable, along with using like a teleport style build where you can just back early and start stacking that tier, and then you reach late game status with 2-3 items, Seraph's Embrace, and you're one-shotting people with, and you still have Seraph's Shield and Asania's. So you're strong enough to one-shot people, and you're also full of defensive tools like heal, exhaust. Maybe you take exhaust in a team fight or something. I think having a Summoner Spellbook build with runes like this just make you more useful. With that said, I don't think Meteor's bad. I think Meteor with Ludens snowballs harder, and potentially you win more games sooner because you get away with it more easily. I think as a general case, Spellbook makes you more useful, and it's going to make you more versatile. Because you generally don't need to poke people to all in them and kill them on Veigar. You're doing your job. Last thing to look at before we get in though, I don't mind the biscuits here over Minion Dematerializer, because they're just nice to have for sustain, and they do give you mana when you might need it. Minion Dematerializer is just kind of what a lot of people like to take, because it's zapping the cannon minions and getting really good back timers, you know, with Cosmic Insight, all the teleports and stuff. It's really just for back timers. But if you want to take biscuits over Minion Dematerializer, it's probably okay. But there's actually one more thing to look at before we get into the VoD itself. I'm going to take a picture of the notes that I wrote and upload it so that you can read it, so that I'm just not reading from it constantly. But you get Rabadons and a Blasting Wand at 28 minutes. When you look at the graph here, going back to the game, you guys are already very, very ahead at 26, 28 minutes, right? You guys probably have this game in a very comfortable position. This is not when you start buying more and more damage, because it's probably extremely unnecessary. This is when you should have gotten the Zhonya's, because the Zhonya's at 40 minutes is when you're like, oh crap, I needed this a lot sooner. You need to opt into these defensive items that assure your late game and assure your teamfight survival before you decide to go, you know, double in on all the damage that you don't need. Because when I see this kind of graph, you don't need Rabadons and another Blasting Wand. If you just have a Zhonya's here, you guys probably win every single team fight, and then you just win right here at the 32-minute mark. You probably don't need that Zhonya's in your Rabadons. You probably don't need the Void Staff in the Rabadons. You probably need this Zhonya's that you waited too long to get. But I think that's most of what I wanted to get into. You take Celerity instead of Transcendence because Veigar builds CDR anyway, and he's weak early. You need Celerity to survive ganks or just dodge skill shots in general. Celerity is super good. But we are going to get right into the game as soon as I switch it over. Magic button. Works. Work. Alright, we're going to try to keep it on red side vision for most of the game to simulate a very paranoid, cautious mindset you need to have when you play a squishy escapeless mid laner. Everybody's trying to kill you all game, and you need to dodge their aggression with smarts, wards, and smart positioning. If you lack any one of those three past this point, since you're playing in Platinum Elo, especially higher Platinum Elo, where you're getting closer and closer to Diamond, it is easy to just die to small mistakes, because players are good enough to punish the smallest of mistakes at this point. You can't have greedy positioning and expect to live on a squishy escapeless caster like this, especially because you don't build defenses. It's just, you know, 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. Squishy, no defenses, mid lane, middle of the map, most accessible. You gotta protect yourself. The fact that you die this many times throughout this game tells me that you are over aggressive, and most of the causes for death in mid lane is usually a lack of respect for the people who could kill you, and not having enough wards or overstaying. But mostly the laning phase probably goes well. I think your first death kicks in at 11 minutes. So I think we're mostly just gonna run right through this. You probably don't need tips on your like basic laning phase here. But if I see anything that sticks out, I'll let you know. If I see like 2 or 3 Diana Qs in a row, for example. Okay, you're definitely standing too close to your minions. That could be purposeful, because you want her to push you in which case I think this is absolutely fine. If that's why you're doing it, you're not really taking too much damage, right? You're under your tower, you're actually quite safe. Get her flash. Yep, this laning phase is going great. Your farm's less than perfect, but when you already get someone's flash, it's probably because you were trying to play more aggressive, in which case it already paid off. Oh wow, you actually don't get that. Okay, we're gonna see how this could have done better. That is really unlucky. I thought you had that for sure. Wow. Anyway, keep going. You have 600 gold. You don't have enough to really get anything that you really want, but you still need it back because you have no mana, so that's smart. Overall, I like the buy. It built into whatever you still need to get. I think it's worth pointing out though, you backed with like 670 gold. You actually missed quite a lot of CS. Had you gotten more CS, you could have backed and gotten a tier and potions and a control ward. So these small errors in your CS early on are actually costing you big time. That may seem like a small mistake, but it's actually very huge. Being able to come back to this lane and have tier basically means you have endless mana and you can just farm at range with your abilities until the time you come back with a lost chapter, rinse and repeat. This is why people take the inspiration tree. You just back and get tier and then you farm up until you're unstoppable on Veigar. You can win lane with aggression and meteor and such. I'm not going to tell you not to do it ever, but this is why this is the most popular build. I think if you focus your CS early, even though you got this Diana's flash, you got this Diana's teleport, you didn't actually get what you wanted to get, right? At the end of the day, you guys are both back in lane with an amp tome and some potions. You have a tiny EXP lead, but you don't have your tier. You don't have your last chapter. You're not stacking as much as you could be because you don't have the mana to do it. Had you better CS'd your first 3 or 4 or 5 waves, instead of focusing on so much on trying to hurt this Diana, you would be left off in a better position, just because you'd have better items and more gold. But we're going to mostly fast forward through the laning phase because, you know, it is what it is. You have an amp tome and potions and you still have a small lead. So that's all good. That lag kind of made that hard to see, but red side vision, slow this down a little bit. You 100% padded the wrong way here, especially because you came from this side, right? I think when you're walking up here, you're thinking that if Diana walks up, you're still going to be able to support Veigar in the case that like he's over here or something. But the issue with that is that you already knew Yi was down here, right? You saw him walk away, so you know Yi is bottom side. Or on the bottom side of your mid. So you walk over this wall because you're trying to harass Diana without being in range of her. But you see this Yi run away here. Once you see this Yi run away, and you see Veigar walking up here, you need to be walking on this side. That way she's trapped. But because you go this way, and you also don't have flash, she gets away. If you were to go this way and cut her off, sure, you think you're like putting yourself between Yi and Diana, so it's risky, but it's not even risky at all. Because he just used his Q, and he's way too far away to actually get anywhere, and his Q is on cooldown. So you walk around this way, trapping her, because she does not have flash. Her flash is still down. If you walk around this way and trap her, because Veigar is already on this side, she's 100% stuck, and you guys get this kill. It's very easy. But because you try to follow him, and you just hug the other side of the wall, instead of going for the pinch, and cutting off her retreat path, no matter which way she goes, you lose this kill. Having the mindfulness to know when somebody's overextended because your jungle's here is a skill that you're going to have to learn and punish for sure. That was a kill that you let get away. And I think it's worth noting that like even if you have tier and like you don't even have meteor here, I think this is still a kill, right? Just because you're going to CC here and she's completely trapped. Think of all the auto attacks you didn't get to throw on her because you didn't walk up and behind her. Meteor is kind of unnecessary to Veigar's function as a laner, in my opinion. You're not trying to like poke people out, you're trying to just catch them out and destroy them after you farmed up your passive, like Nasus. Chapter, I think, is the right buy here. You would not get tier at this point if it wasn't your first purchase when you can buy Lost Chapter. I don't think you should ever buy a tier when you can get a Lost Chapter. The only case I think that might be is if you're this, and you still need to stack a tier anyway, or maybe Cassiopeia. So when you know her flash is down for the next 5 minutes, you basically know until 8:10, or not 8:10, but 13:10, that you're going to be able to just walk up and cage her at any time. Specifically, a lot of dashes, the way Veigar's stun works, you can't just dash through Veigar's wall, you get stuck on it. So against characters that have dashes but no flash, Veigar's wall is a lot more damning of a CC ability than it even looks, because you can just cage somebody. And then while they're caged, they might just get shot to pieces by Twitch, or, you know, burned to death by Brand. Or while they're stuck in the cage, they get engaged on by Kled or your Rengar. This is going to go back to, I think, one of the most important points of this on Veigar, is that now that you're level 8, you've put your second point in W. I think this is a huge mistake. And we are actually going to pause this and switch back browser. Can minimize here. Alt tab. Boom. Okay. If we look at Veigar's skills right here, when you put points into the W, the only thing you're getting per level is 50 damage and an additional cost of 5 mana. The cooldown on W goes down depending on how stacked your passive is. Now, if we look at the E, every point that you put in that is not only reducing the cooldown, but it's also increasing the stun duration. E is definitely the skill you max second. It makes you much more useful, it makes you much more oppressive, and it sets up more and more combos. Having 2 or 3 E's in a team fight instead of 1 is insane, and it's why Veigar's strong. Not because you do, you know, 100 to 200 more damage per W. It's because you threw 2 more E's in a team fight that you won it, or you picked 2 more people. So start maxing your E second. And back to the legends. Your build's in a good spot, though. I think this is where you guys start getting fed. That death looks like some feels bad, man, but we're gonna see if it could have been preventable. You missed your E on Yi. I think that's the easiest thing to nitpick here. And instead of walking out, you walk back in, right? So this is actually an easy fix. In terms of how you don't die to this the second time, I think you throw a better E. This is actually the same idea with Jinx. They recently changed Jinx to where her traps can be triggered by dashes, so you can't just go over them anymore. So you use your traps or your E as an escape. You throw it out in front of you, and you force the other guy to walk through it to chase you. In this case, you try to cage Yi, but Yi is the perfect example of a champion that you do not try to put the cage on top of, because he has a way to dodge it, and he has a way to jump to you, and they just happen to be the same skill. So in a case like this where someone has a way to dodge your snare or your stun, you don't put it on them, you put it between you and your path to safety, because they're going to have to run through it to chase you. I also think what really kills you here, though, is that after you're safe and you get out, you walk back in. And walking back in gets you hit by that hook. And then you flash. So this is actually a really, really bad death for you, right? When you know you're dead like that, don't use your flash, because that makes it twice as bad. I think the fact that you used your flash and died here is probably what gets you killed for your next few deaths, because they say, oh look, Veigar doesn't have flash, and all of a sudden roaming mid is something they do with a lot more frequency. So you're still trying to farm up and finish your first item right now. You have decent ward coverage across the map. You can see some stuff. It's a lot better than seeing nothing. Chilling, and then you just wait to drop the thing until she gets there. We're gonna look back at this. Alright, we don't know where Yi is, but we know that if you stick around mid long enough, he'll show up. We know that he's 0-2 though. We know that he isn't fed necessarily. So while the jungler is not fed in this scenario, when you are playing a squishy mid laner who has no defenses, the jungler does not have to be fed to kill you. So you need to show respect for him regardless. Okay, so you're already dead at this point. How does this go better next time? This E is definitely early, right? When this Diana doesn't have flash, you don't E this early when there's a gank coming in. You wait until Rengar is like about to be here and then you cage her, because she has nowhere to go with no flash. You definitely throw this way too early. Throwing it way too early means you can't use it to sit on it and block her counter engage. The reason why Veigar's stun is so good is that if you cast it and then just stand in it, this melee champions are basically forced to walk through it in order to fight you. So if you wait longer to cast that stun until Rengar gets closer, and then you immediately walk towards the edge, forcing Diana to get stunned to jump on you, you're going to lose less health, and you're probably going to kill her more cleanly. But the fact that I think you waste your only CC in a matchup where the enemy jungler's only weakness is CC, it leaves you very open to the counter gank, and that's basically what gets you killed. The only thing that stops Master you from chopping you to bits is CC, and you used it to kill Diana. And you didn't even use it optimally to kill Diana. Because you didn't use your CC properly, you took more damage than you needed to. This is the first time you're level 9 and you've backed. I think you consider getting blue trinket here. And you start building that vision network. Like, you buy your blue trinket, you place your first one right here. 2 minutes later, you place your second one right here. Your third one goes here, or maybe even your first one goes here, etc., etc. If nobody walks in here and kills them, you know, 6 minutes later, 8 minutes later, you have wards all inside your own jungle. Just nice. I like that you're hugging topside right here, closer to Veigar and Kled, who are near close by. I don't like that you're walking into the dark map down here. But I do like that ward. It's a good ward. Right. That's actually really good by the Diana. This is the price of using your stun and missing it on Veigar. You generally need to save it, the same way you used it too early here, when Rengar was only on the way. You use it too early here, because Veigar is escapeless and he's very squishy. His stun is his only offensive CC, and it's also his only defensive tool that he can use to peel for himself. So when you use it offensively and you miss, even when you're up a level, even when you're up gold, it leaves you open to stuff like this. So you need to save your stun in assassin matchups. especially against an assassin who you know is going to jump on you, right? The same way you tried to cage the Yi, you tried to cage the Diana, but she had a really nifty way out of it, and you got chopped up because you didn't have it. So, especially in these Diana or assassin matchups where someone wants to jump on you and cut you up, hold your E. Hold on to it a little longer than you normally would in like another matchup. It's good though, you bought some magic resistance. This might be another example of a game where, like, if you have Summoner Spellbook where you build tier first, you can get your Seraph Shield later, and maybe you pick Exhaust later in a team fight, right? So all of a sudden you're able to cancel Diana's dive and just really screw her over, either between your E-stun or your Exhaust, or the fact that you have Seraph Shield. Trying to get to the spot lane fight. I see that you're throwing your R first a lot. I think it's better to throw it than to have them get out of range and then end up not throwing it. But you should be trying to throw a Q first before you throw your R. You're throwing your R before you throw a Q, and that's not good. Because your R has execute damage. You want to weak one first. I do think you had to flash there. Actually, hindsight's 2020. Thresh didn't have the mana to flare Q you, but Swain might have walked you down anyway because your E was on cooldown. You probably did have to flash there, but we're gonna try to see if you don't end up in this situation to begin with. Do something different. That's the real question. So this is where we'd look at the bot fight that you decide to roam down to help too. Instead of pushing mid, I think by this time in the game, if you're going to start making roams and fighting team fights and trying to get places, by not having upgraded your sorcerer's shoes, especially when you have magical boots and it's cheaper, you're really shooting yourself in the foot here. I think you could also wet merc treads, which you end up getting, but whenever laning phase starts to end and team fights start happening like this, you should probably either have your T2 boots or stick to pushing mid, because you really need that mobility. I think not having that mobility is ultimately what gets you caught here, because you hesitate because you know you don't have the movement speed or the slow resistance or tenacity to really outplay the Swain W here. You hesitate a little bit, and I think the hesitation gets you caught. But I also think if you have merc treads, you also just kind of get away from this because you're faster and the slow doesn't hurt as bad. So if you're going to start roaming and leaving your lane after, you know, 12-ish minutes especially, get your T2 boots. He's able to chase you down as well because you don't have boots. At this point in the game, I think you're still trying to farm up your second or item in your boots, so you're not really trying to leave lane. You just left lane and it didn't really turn out so good. But before we keep going, we're actually going to look back at that fight one more time. I think there was something better that you could have done. Oh, wait, it's way before that. Here we go. Oh, no, this is it. Okay. the other reason why I don't like this room, Diana's level 11. Look how close you are to level 11. And your ult's down. Or maybe it's... No, you just used it here. That's why it's down. There it is right there. Yeah. So your ult's not down. But you missed your Q, and you threw your ultimate. You're also not level 11. Like, you're so close. I don't think you should be looking for fights like this without your T2 boots. I think you should be trying to hit 11 first. This is where, in my notes that I posted, you'll see where I talk about combining item spikes with level spikes. I think if you have slightly better farm, got a little bit more CS, got a little bit more XP, and you have Sorks and 11 here, this fight goes way better, where you're actually able to just clap this Diana because you either don't miss your Q and the combination of all the other things. Sork shoots with level 11. She just dies here, if that happens. And then I think this whole fight goes differently. Veigar's able to switch targets more quickly, etc. It's just the little things add up. I wouldn't choose to fight fights like this across the map and use your ultimate when you're almost 11 and just barely don't have sorcerer shoes. We're gonna go back to the future. Do your laning phase. Still focusing on your items. And it gets 1v3'd, or 3v1'd, I should say. This is where we start to get into the later parts of the game, where I think your itemization is your biggest mistakes. You do start dying more too, but mostly this is where itemization goes off the rails, and you're not as strong as you could be, which in turn drags out the game. I also think the fact that you're maxing W here instead of E second is minimizing your utility and making you less useful. I think if you had potentially built into more CDR here, like a Zanya's to complement your Merc Treads, so that you're hard to kill, you're tanky. Like Swain has one right now, right? He got it before the team fight started popping off. You need to get your Zanyas before the team fights start popping off, not at 40 minutes. I think building into Zanya is going to give you more CDR. With an Emax build, you could potentially be picking up blue buff and having your E's on like a sub 10-second cooldown at this point in the game. Whereas right now, they are on a 14.4 second cooldown. Not only would they be on a sub 10-second cooldown, they would be stunning for an additional second longer. I think that has very obvious value over a missable skill shot that is only gaining a small amount of damage per rank. This is ultimately the way more useful skill, and you should look into building CDR items second, like Zanya's or Banshees, along with your Sorcerer's Shoes. Yeah, this fight's pretty crazy. He gets absolutely demolished. You get pulled because of the Diana moonfall. That's actually kind of awesome. Didn't know Swain could do that, but I guess it makes sense. I think that's just kind of the price of being a squishy mage, right? You got people like this big Swain, you got people like this big Diana, and they all want to kill you. When you're squishy, you can't really get hit by skill shots like that Diana. The big thing here, though, is that your team comp is all damage, right? You don't have a support like Janna or Lulu or a Alistar or a Braum who's going to peel for you in games like this. This makes it doubly important to buy a tanky item to protect yourself, because no one's going to do it for you. You don't have a healer, you don't have a shield. Your team is all damage, so it's kind of all man for himself in these fights. This makes it even more to like build more CC, build more utility, and build a little bit more defensive, because you have to think for yourself. More CC and more tankiness is going to overall net you less deaths and make you more useful. I don't think this purchase is bad though, because none of them are buying magic resistance, none of them being any of them except Thresh, so building this Merlin Omicron is actually kind of good. It also stops Swain healing and Master Yi healing, so this non-com purchase is good. I can't really be mad at this. It also gives HP, so it is a tanky purchase in some ways. Don't think it's bad. I'm just trying to stress that Zhonya's is better and better the sooner you get it, not 40 minutes. Important thing to note here, your Twitch's bot lane. You guys choose to fight this. I would say your Kled chooses to fight this for your team, but let's see what happens. You kind of just walk right in and get killed. When you see the Twitches in here, you walk right in a straight line. I think it's actually important to note here. You used your E, it went on cooldown. If you were maxing your E right now, it would be back up already. So you would have a really fat E to throw right here. But you're trying to walk up and follow up. Here's Swain's root, and you're just straight up walking up in a straight line. He sees you, and we're baloney. That's the end of that. Don't walk up in a straight line. You should also be maxing your stun second. People getting caught, you go back to your tower and farm. Oh no. Oh no. Damn. Well, you do a little bit of damage. I think the Merc Treads and health from the Merlinomicon definitely helped you tough that up. You knew your limits there and you killed him. Good job. Nice. That's a big swing, but he doesn't have magic resistance and he doesn't have health like. I think this is when you go for the Rabadons. I think that's, in this circumstance, this is correct. Because you're already on the Merlinomicon and you're looking for that big final boost that helps you one-shot basically everybody on their team yet. No one has MR, so you just continue to get more damage. I think the Rabadons is 100% what you buy here. You see Rengar on the map, E and Thresh topside, so you push. This is where I think if you like have a blue trinket at this point in the game, you've already like filled all this with blue wards. So you're always going to be seeing this, you're probably going to have vision of this, and like at any point they might come in and sweep this once in a while. But I think you should try out blue trinket, see how it works for you. Because the value of filling all this up with vision and permanent blue wards, that if this is warded, potentially Brand with his wards, he feels like he doesn't need to put them here. And he starts putting them in the river. So like you take care of this with your vision and your blue trinket, and then the rest of your team kind of takes care of this. You just want your team to group up and fight right now. They're splitting up. And it just they can't do Baron and you guys kill them. I think this is where you just get monstrously fed. You guys don't have a tank, so Baron is not an option. Ace him. More gold, more farming. More killing. Hey, you're getting huge. Okay, it's worth noting here, you leave base with a lot of gold in your pocket. When it's after this and your team is like strong enough to start looking for Baron plays and such, you shouldn't be leaving base with an empty inventory slot and all this money. You should just buy 3 control wards, honestly, because you guys are so strong, the next team fight, as long as you win it and like you have minions to push, you're probably going to be able to set up game-ending plays with like game-ending Baron pushes. So the fact that you leave base without spending your money on wards is pretty bad. This teleport's also pretty bad, but it's not the end of the world. This is why I don't like when people take teleport on squishy mid laners now. Without spellbook and the ability to switch out for different summoners late game to be more useful, you end up making really stupid moves like that, like teleporting into kind of nothing. I'm not meaning to insult you and say that you're stupid for it, but that's just a very useless teleport, and that thing has a 5-minute cooldown. With spellbook, you could potentially switch to exhaust for late game team fights, or that way you can exhaust Swain, you know, and all of a sudden he's way less scary when he dives in. And with your maxed stun, instead of a cooldown of 12.8 seconds and a 2-second stun at this point, you would already be at like 10 seconds with a 2.5 stun duration. So that's just more utility. Your damage isn't really a question at this point. Slaughtering them. Oh, here's where you buy Void Staff instead of pushing with your team to end the game. This is actually really bad. You guys are already so strong that this decision to back here is really silly. They already saw you kind of pathing down here, and the reason why this is extra bad is because that teleport that you just used to teleport here and kind of not do anything, you don't have it now when you need it. If you're gonna back for your Void Staff before a game-winning push like this, you better have teleport to get there. I don't know if you were pinging it in the chat like a madman, letting them know that your teleport was off a cooldown in 40 seconds or that you just based, but if they see you right here and that you just kind of base, I think you kind of baited them for sure. This is higher up in the elos where you kind of need to trust your team and just group up and end the game a little more often. You all have Baron, you guys have a 10k gold lead. You don't need this Void Staff. What you need is to group up with your team and end the game with Baron. But they lose this team fight because you're not here. They get aced, pretty sure. This is really bad because you used your teleport and you couldn't rejoin your team. If you know that this is something you want to do, then have your teleport to do it. Without teleport, you just don't back here for Void Staff. You group with your team and you push down the tower. And at the very least, you ping that you're going to buy Void Staff like 8 million times, and then you ping that your teleport's on cooldown. That way they know for sure that you're not here for this, because they just get destroyed here. You should have waited for this. And then you die too. You do get one, but that's not worth it. You guys went from probably should have won the game to now it's gonna stall out until the next Baron. Really hurt, really hurt. There needs to be a time when you just decide to back and reset with full HP rather than stay until you die, because this is the straw that kind of breaks the camel's back. You guys lose the game after this because of their Baron play. We're gonna fast forward though and actually see what happens over the Red team triple kill. You kind of just walked up and died in that team fight as well because you had no HP. This is when you finally start focusing on this, right? But it's kind of too little too late. You needed to have that item already with your squishy champion pick and no real support on your team. No one's going to be able to heal and protect you. Veigar split pushing bottom, your team gets caught out, and then that's just game. Okay, we're gonna look at this last fight here, where you guys were trying to work the split push. See how this could have gone differently, and that's gonna be the end of the buffer there. I just don't think you engage this. When it's a site in the game, and your jungler or anybody split pushing bottom, anybody that does not have TP, you do not go looking for a fight by walking into the enemy jungle. It's just not something you do. You let this guy push and you let him get split pressure. And then you probably think that you can just check him and kill him immediately, and especially with your build, that's what you want to do. But when you have a split pusher, it leads to results like this. You're getting up in the elos where you need to be more patient and appreciate the fact that a 5v4 is a 5v4 and a split pusher is someone that you need to let do their job. If you decide to engage when your team is split pushing, that makes you just as bad as when your team engaged when you backed and wanted to get void staff. So this is just kind of the same thing coming back to bite you. But since you already made that mistake once, I think you can see how it's kind of your fault here. You decide to fight this fight without it goes bad. If I had to go back to anything to say what probably cost you this game, in context, I think the itemization is actually not that bad. I think you enter a lot of team fights in a predictable way that gets you killed, like you kind of straight line your way in, or you overstay with low HP. Those are fixable. I think you can just fix that if you're more mindful of the skill shots that could hit you and screw you over. Like when you walked into that one team fight when Swain had his root. If you didn't see him use it yet, or it's been, you know, over 10 seconds, he has another one, and you're the squishy mid lane mage with no support on your team. He knows that if he lands that, you're dead. So when you don't have a real support who's going to protect you, even though I say just said your itemization was not bad this game, I think it could have been better. I think you need to be more willing to opt into the Zhonya's sooner this game, 100%. You get it so late that it doesn't matter. Like you don't even have your secret stacked at 40 minutes. This is a pointless buy. The big thing was choosing to back and not rejoin your team with teleport because you already used your teleport at 32 minutes. That is definitely what I think lost you this game, if I had to pick a single thing. I hope this is helpful. I'll post the notes in a photo link down below the description. Good luck in your next few games, dude. Or lady. I don't mean to be presumptive.